So, welcome to the Kelly Healing Project, where we have real conversations about healing, growth, and stepping in your power. I'm Kelly, and I'm so glad you're here. So, today I'm joined by Lizzie Lasater, a yoga teacher, writer, and creator whose work explores restorative yoga, graceful aging, functional movement, and embodied creativity. So, Lizzie has been teaching yoga since 2005 and is the co-creator of Shavasana, the practice of radical rest. Her work explores something I think so many of us struggle with: how to slow down, reconnect with our bodies, and recognize that rest isn't something you have to earn. So, today we're going to talk about what happens when our minds are ready for change, but our bodies haven't quite caught up yet. Why slowing down can actually feel uncomfortable, and what restorative yoga can teach us about our nervous system, healing, and relationship with rest. Lizzie, welcome to the Kelly Healing Project. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, you grew up in a yoga household, and now you've been teaching for more than 2 decades. So, how has your understanding of yoga and especially rest changed as you've gotten older?
Such a good question. Well, I always joke that I've been practicing yoga since the womb because my mama, Judith Hansen Lasater, has been teaching for over 50 years. And when I was a kid, yoga was just in the background of our house. That was what my parents were into. It's what we did in the summers was go to yoga retreats, and mom was teaching and we were running around, my brothers and I. So I took it for granted. I wasn't that interested in it until my late teens when I kind of took to it for myself. I did a study abroad in India when I was 18, and that's when actually I started looking for a teacher. I was in Varanasi, Benares, for 2 months living with a family, and we were each supposed to do a study project. And I looked around trying to find someone who was teaching yoga. And what was so interesting about that experience is I couldn't find anyone who was teaching what I already knew of as yoga, the style, the lineage. I went and took a bunch of trial classes and it didn't feel right. And so I started doing a home practice. That was the first time when I was 18. I would just get up in the morning and I would do 30 minutes of practice on my own. And what I discovered is that even though I had never formally officially studied yoga, I already knew enough to do half an hour. I somehow the practice was already inside of me. And to your question about what has changed, I mean, now I'm 43. I have 6-year-old twin boys. I run a business. I have a house, a partner, you know, too many things. And so I have absolutely turned more consciously towards rest. I'm also a workaholic. So just to really out myself, that is like, which what I think that means when we have that wiring is just that work is a really easy default. And work is a place where I feel safe, where I feel productive, efficacious. I get good vibes when I work. So it's a place I retreat to. When I don't have a plan, it's like I'm going to work. And so for me, and I think some of our listeners can surely relate, it's like rest has to be the conscious choice. I have to actually like either put it on my calendar, put it on my to-do list, like schedule it in, think about it, plan for it. Because if I don't like I literally had an hour now before we were recording, Kelly, and it was like the first idea that pops into my mind. I have this kind of like empty hour was like, oh well, I should just go check in with my computer, check my like just and I already did a block of work this morning. My inbox is totally under control at the moment. Like I don't actually need and I checked it on my phone this afternoon. It's like I don't need to go sit in front of my computer for another hour. And so then the restorative yoga choice is like I lay down for 10 minutes, covered my eyes and did a pose in order to hopefully put my nervous system in a place where I'm more available and more open to connect with you and our dear listener.
Right, yes. Yes, so many of us have issues with relaxing and resting, and I definitely struggle with it. So you've shared that yoga actually helped you with anxiety and restorative yoga eventually helped your panic attacks go away. So can you take us back to a time, to basically that time in your life? Like what were you experiencing and what changed for you when you began practicing restorative yoga?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember being in my 20s and I was very sort of high achieving and driven. And I had done a master's degree at Columbia University in New York
Oh,
City in architecture design.
mm,
And I thought that was going to be my path, always doing a home practice as my kind of anchor throughout my studies. But when I finished my master's degree, my then boyfriend, now husband, is from Austria. And so we decided to move here to Austria, where I live now, for a year trial basis. And in the beginning, I really struggled to find a job, like to kind of find a community, figure out what I was doing with my life. And I had this real mismatch between, the amount of time, energy, and my parents' money that had been poured into my education. And then what I felt like as I'm a failure because I'm not succeeding, achieving, I don't know
mhm,
what I'm doing. And and so that was a period where I struggled with panic attacks, with feelings of panic, with panic attacks, with just feeling like
mhm.
life is passing me by. I'm not on the right track. I don't have a vision.
Right.
Am I gonna have a kid? What am I, what, like, what, right?
Yes.
And especially, I think a lot of the expectations that I put on myself about that kind of the high achieving educational track that I had been on. And then I knew it wasn't the right fit for me to go into a
Mm,
60-hour a week architecture office job. But I didn't know what was right. And so I think this is very relatable, hopefully. I just felt that kind of sense of being adrift in my 20s. But there's an interesting combination of being adrift and ambitious. So it's like I knew that
mhm.
it wasn't there yet. I wasn't just adrift and relaxed about it. I always joke about restorative yoga. Like, not everybody needs restorative yoga. I mean, I have a friend who we were WhatsApping and we were trying to set up a call. And then she was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to start bleeding tomorrow. So I'll be just sort of off the grid for a couple days. And then we should reconnect after that. And I was thinking to myself, like, first of all, awesome. Second of all, she doesn't need restorative yoga. Like she's like taking 3 days off to have her period. That's fabulous. That's not how I'm wired, right? So those of us who are pushing ourselves, we're the
Mm,
ones who need restorative yoga.
right, yes. And I guess maybe too, that anxiety maybe that you were feeling was also you felt like things weren't in alignment. And so you were able to kind of sense that and kind of, wait, this feels better. And you were able to kind of shift and pivot from there and stop putting pressure on yourself. And that definitely, yeah, helped you get everything under control. That's great.
Exactly. And I really
Yeah.
believe, I don't know if you've felt this, Kelly, in your work, but like the universe really speaks in energy. And so
Mhm.
when I found what I was supposed to be doing, which was building an online yoga community with my mom, like I felt like I was walking downhill. Like it was just, there wasn't a sense of struggle. And I often say in the work that
Oh,
we do, I host online courses and big Zoom events. Like I often feel like I'm not really working. Like the work is you know what I mean? Like
yes.
getting people in the room, sending out the newsletters, the inboxes work. Like there is work in my job. Bookkeeping is work, all that stuff. But like when I'm actually teaching a yoga retreat or I'm actually on Zoom with my mom or one of our other teachers, like I'm just learning and I'm just in flow
Mm,
and so the universe is sending me like a very clear signal, not only by the experience while I'm doing it of joy and flow, but also the feedback from students that they're enjoying what we're off, right? You know what I mean? And that the business is
right.
growing and all of that. So and that's what that phase was for me in my 20s where I felt so anxious because I could tell that like my ambitions, my talents, and my like what I could give was not being matched by the jobs I was trying to do.
Hmm.
Right. And I always say,
Right.
like, because my partner now is an architect and he's so talented. And I always say, like,
Mm.
I was kind of a bad architect. Like, I just wasn't, I was very good at design and I was very certain about what I wanted to propose, but I didn't like the whole second half, which is like building the thing and dealing with all of the contractors and the carpenters and it's like and there was something too that I found very exhausting about the length. I mean, when you build a building, it's several years and you have to hold all of that in your brain for such a long time. And I love, like, we're doing a big book launch right now for our book. And we wrote this book in less than a year. And now the book about Shavasana is coming out. And so that's right now we're recording this at the end of the summer. And it's like, that's my focus for the fall. And then it's done. It's like, there's a kind of finiteness to it that I really enjoy. Phases and projects that I do now in our work with yoga and restorative yoga.
Okay, so you started talking about the book. So the Shavasana, the practice of radical rest. So what inspired you to write it, and what do you hope somebody walks away understanding or experiencing after reading it?
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
a really small, handheld, friendly book. We think of Shavasana as yoga's most powerful pose. Many of you know that as the pose at the end of a yoga class where you lie down, sometimes with no props, sometimes with a bolster or a blanket, and it's meant to integrate all of the other
Mm,
practices of yoga. My mom and I co-wrote the book together. Her publisher came to us. She's published by Shambhala, and this is mom's 12th book, and she says it's her last book. And they
mm,
came to us and said, we would love for you to write a book together. And this was the idea that we had, was to focus on a single pose, which is somewhat radical. And of course, Shavasana is part of a much larger system, and we acknowledge that and we honor that. But what we're trying to say with this book is we're trying to actually take one step off the yoga mat. So it's based in yoga,
mm,
it comes from yoga, but we really want this pose to enter into the culture, like that people understand that lying down for 20 minutes, making your physical body really comfortable and on purpose, down regulating your
mm,
nervous system has a myriad of benefits. And the word radical for me also points to the fact that there is so much going on in the news and in social media and with our planet. Like, there are multiple ways to approach quote unquote activism. Like, you can be out there marching in the streets, or the path I take and what we talk about in the book is like you can also change your nervous system. Like you can,
mhm,
because we are social animals and so we co-regulate each other. And especially those of us who are parenting, partnering, communitying, like if we're interacting with people, if we're teachers in any form, or just, like if we're around other humans on a regular basis, like we are absolutely, it's not selfish to regulate, to spend time on our own nervous
mm.
system health because that leaks out onto everyone we come in contact with.
Right. I completely agree. Yeah. You're putting that energy out. And if you're focusing on being calm, then you're helping other people and you're also showing the way and being the example as well. So I completely agree. Yeah. It has a
Yeah.
rippling effect that not people, a lot of people don't realize. But
Yeah.
so can we talk more about like what restorative yoga is and how it's different, like what how it's different from other kinds of yoga that most people probably picture?
Absolutely. So in the United States, I would say what the main idea most people think of when they think of yoga is comes from a certain lineage called Krishnamacharya. He was a teacher, and then he had several star pupils like Patabi Joyce and BKS Iyengar, Desikachar. These teachers then developed their systems. Anything that you're doing that's called Hatha Yoga, Flow Yoga, Vinyasa Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Iyengar Yoga, any of those type of words, they all come back to this one man, Krishnamacharya. And so that's the lineage I'm in. Mama studied directly with BKS Iyengar in the I think 70s already, but definitely the 80s, 1980s. And what she then did, she experienced a tragedy in her personal life. Her twin brother died of cancer in their 40s.
Mm.
And in that phase of grief, she was already a yoga teacher and, practicing and had been studying with Mr. Iyengar, but she found that she just couldn't do headstand. Like she just couldn't do, she was also in perimenopause, we would say now. And she went into an intense period where she did a lot of these supported poses. And that's where she wrote her first book about this. And she didn't invent these poses, but she drew a circle. She was the first person I would, as far as I know, to draw a circle around them and say, this set of poses, which she called restorative yoga, has merit and value on its own, separate from the active style of yoga. And the way BKS was teaching in the Iyengar lineage and in the Krishnamacharya, these quieter poses were integrated into the full practice. They were included. So I'm not saying that she like invented them, but she, with her first book, Relax and Renew, she sort of codified them into having value. And now the way we talk about it is nervous system downregulation, because that's kind of where our culture has gone and we understand more about the autonomic nervous system. But back then, when she wrote her first book, I think in the 90s, it was about stress. And so it was like, these are poses to do to de-stress. And the hallmark of restorative yoga poses is that they are about opening, not about stretching. So some of our listeners, I am guessing, will know yin yoga. And yin yoga is a very slow form of yoga where you hold the poses for a longer period of time, but you're still stretching. And what you're doing in yin yoga, as with other forms of active yoga, is that you're using that sensation of stretch to catch your attention, to bundle, to
Mm.
focus your attention, right? I always say when you're in dog pose and you're feeling your hamstrings stretch, you're not thinking about your credit card bill. Or like you're not thinking
Right.
right or about you're not thinking about um some annoying email that you have to deal with. So restorative yoga takes it one step further in the sense that we let go of stretching. We support the body in positions of comfort and ease to support relaxation and health in restorative yoga. And so the support looks like blankets, pillows, bolsters
Mm.
in these very specific kind of nervous system targeted ways. Mama is also a physical therapist. So it's like I sometimes describe it as in restorative yoga, we're like pushing specific buttons on the elevator. And so, with the way each pose has an energetic signature, the way we set up the body in these positions of comfort. And then, because we're not in the realm of stretch, but in the realm of comfort, we then stay for much longer. So, the poses are held, experienced, enjoyed for like 10 to 20 minutes, and your eyes are closed and no one is talking. But you're in this state, your brain waves actually shift, and you're in this state. It's like a liminal in between space between wake and sleep. You're not sleeping, but you, first of all, on the physical body level, you're activating all kinds of parasympathetic nervous system. You're also activating recovery, repair. Immune system loves this state, but also mentally, um, our brains are so craving silence. And so our brain loves the silence, and it's really the brain waves that we experience in restorative yoga are much closer to kind of creativity, intuition, insight. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that's happening and I always talk about it in terms of our time, our era, our culture as like the only time in my day when I'm not consuming or producing.
Mm.
So there's a lot of layers. Have you ever tried, Kelly, restorative yoga?
I haven't. No, not yet.
Good. Okay, well, it's coming for
Yeah.
you. I think it's really
Okay, yeah.
growing. Like I see it like it's a trend in not just in yoga, but there's a big podcaster who talks about Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford professor, and he talks about non-sleep deep rest, which is what he calls Shavasana. It's like
Oh,
his
okay.
sciencey term for Shavasana, but what he just means is 15 or 20 minutes covering your eyes, not moving, body comfortable, and letting your brain shift into this different state.
Right. Okay. There's so many benefits. You said, yeah, immune system. I mean, slowing the brain waves, decrease anxiety. I feel like everybody really needs this. So for someone who spent years being hypervigilant or always needing to be prepared for what happens next, can the body actually interpret slowing down as unsafe? And if so, how do we begin teaching the body to actually soften?
Okay, yes. And I'm not a trauma expert, so I really obviously
That's,
encourage everyone to get individual advice from their own healthcare professionals, etc. I mean, PTSD and
mm,
hypervigilance, those type of words, those are kind of what I would say extreme cases of the heightened, elevated anxious nervous system that many of us have. And so there are cases, of course, when you're dealing with that where you're not going to feel safe, for example, covering your eyes, especially in a group context, or you're not going to be safe, turning your back to the door, that type of thing. One thing, interestingly, when we teach restorative yoga and when we teach teachers to teach restorative yoga, is that we emphasize what is now, and mom has been doing this for decades. It's so funny because when I was a teenager, I remember thinking how like cringy it was that she used to always say to her students, "May I touch you?" And what
uh,
I realized is like she was just old school trauma aware because she was personally trauma aware, having
mm,
experienced it. And so she has taught like that for decades. So we're very conscious of creating a certain type of environment when we teach restorative yoga in groups. Like,
mm,
I'm not going to touch you without asking. I'm not going to touch you when your eyes are closed. Um, really holding a safe space. But when you
mm,
practice on your own, which is what the book guides you through, the book is our book Shavasana has 4 different practices and they're basically different physical setups. One of them even is on your couch. So it's like Shavasana on your couch. If you don't have a bolster, you don't have all the yoga stuff, what are the things you can do? What are the buttons in the elevator you can push to
mm,
activate the maximum possible relaxation on your couch, which I sort of advocated for putting into the book again for that one step outside of yoga or one step off the yoga mat. And also because it's like just the honest truth of how I often practice in the winter. It's cold here. I have an old house, cold floors. And so often after lunch in the winter, I will lie down for a 20 or 30-minute Shavasana before I pick the kids
mm.
up. And I do it on my couch. So I was like, we should just include this. And mom liked it because she's written 2 books on restorative yoga. This is her third book. And she was like, oh, I like that because I haven't included that anywhere before. It's like a new take
Mm.
on it.
Right. Okay. So, how can we tell the difference between truly resting and simply distracting or checking out?
Okay, such a good question.
Yeah.
We're very good at distracting
Mm,
ourselves.
yeah.
There is a wonderful concept in the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, which is one of the philosophical underpinnings of yoga. And he writes about raga and devesha, which are these twin concepts. And one of them is the things we're attracted to, the things we're reaching for, the things we want more of. And the other one is the things we're pushing away. And the key insight
Mm,
in the sutra is that both of them, like we're free from neither of them. So whether you're pulling something towards you or pushing something away from you, you're dancing with it and you're not free of it. So what I think is really important for us to understand in our current culture is that it's like an uphill battle with, it's not just that the phone wants us to be attracted to it and to spend a lot of time on it, but what I notice is that it's not just coming from the notifications from the outside. It's my distraction is often coming from the inside. Like
Mm.
I was working today at a coffee shop and I'm working on my emails. And, it's like summer break here. So I left my kids home with my partner. I have a home office, but then I was like, I'm getting out of here for 3 hours. I'm going to go sit at a coffee shop. You have the kids. I'm going to go work, right? So I'm there. I'm super focused. And then I like distracted myself to check something on my phone. Like it was over there, it was
Mm.
turned down. I didn't see a notification, but it came from inside out that I was like, ooh, I should just check that app and see, uh, you know? And so I think that we're fighting this battle on multiple fronts, the raga and the devesha. It's like what we're pulling in, what we're pushing away, what's coming at us in terms of the notifications and what's coming from within us in terms of what we're constantly distracting ourselves with. And one really interesting experiment is like if you go somewhere where you don't have internet. I just taught a retreat for 2 weeks in Montana at the Feather Pipe Ranch. I was there for the first week as a guest and the second week teaching. And the first week I was in a cabin that didn't have electricity and didn't have Wi-Fi, and you're in the middle of the woods in Montana. It was so interesting. So my phone was effectively, I had it with me in the cabin for like clock in the night, but it didn't work. Like it couldn't access anything. It didn't
Mm.
like go to anything. And I noticed how many times in the evening and the early morning I would like think of something I would want to Google or check or look up, like, or ask AI. And it's like just the fact that the internet was turned off brought me a great deal of awareness of like, oh my God, I would have been like, there would have been 15 times between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. when I would have like, or 10 times when I would have wanted to like, oh, let me just, oh, where is Denver, Colorado exactly?
Mhm.
Like compared to, or you're even reading a book. It can be innocuous. You're like reading a book. I was reading, and then you like see a word or a place or a historical thing and you want to just look it up, right? So,
Mhm.
but back to your original question, I mean, the difference between distraction, checking out, and true relaxation is the quality of our awareness. And that is what yoga is all about, is training our awareness, training our ability to be focused on the breath or focused on our hamstrings or focused on the sensations in the body. Um, those are just practices. It's yoga is not about the shapes that we make. It's not even about the breathing. It's I think it's about the residue that those practices leave in our nervous system. And so that's a way to ask yourself if you lie down on your couch with your phone, as we all do, and you're scrolling on social media, and then something happens and you have to, it's like the time is up or you have to get up and go do something. And then you can notice what is the residue of this last half an hour. And then I challenge you, even if you don't really know anything about yoga or anything about Shavasana, I can tell you right now in 3 steps how to practice a different state, a state of conscious relaxation, and then do that with for 20 or 30 minutes, and then ask yourself, what is the residue that this has left in my nervous system?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, I really like that. So you also teach something about somatic strength. So what does that mean, and how is somatic strength different from the way we typically think about building strength or exercising?
Okay, so I've been working for the last few years with a yoga therapist named Mary Richards, and we teach this class on Lasater.yoga, the yoga community that I've built. And she has a class called Somatic Strength, which we run once a year. We'll run it in January again. And then we have a monthly class called Somatic Self Care. And her whole approach, first of all, is that ladies, especially in midlife and beyond, we need to be doing resistance training. We need to be doing strength training. And the yoga that most of us practice from the Krishnamacharya lineage was just not developed with the midlife woman, midlife and beyond woman in mind. It wasn't developed for us. It was really developed for young men to suppress their sexual energy so that they could meditate. Now we've translated that into women in midlife, or women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. We have women on our Zooms who of from the 40 plus. And what we need to prevent osteoporosis and to support healthy aging and, like, frankly, independent living, and functional movement, is we need to build muscle. And so she has developed this philosophy that she calls somatic strength. And what it means is we're doing strength training and we're doing functional movements. It's always only really functional. I'm not interested in any kind of like weight thing that doesn't directly translate to real life. And but she teaches it because she's a yoga teacher. She teaches it from the breath, from the what's called interoception, the like real time experiencing of what's going on in your body from that state of awareness. And so yogis just absolutely love it because it feels like yoga. Like it's kind of feeding two birds with one seed. So because of the way she guides us, we are doing movements which we are really nourishing for us in terms of strength and functional movement and building muscle. But the quality of the awareness, the quality of the residue afterward is as if we've done a yoga practice.
Okay.
And
Wow.
right. So, and it's very mat based, it's like it's for yogis by yogis, right? And I just did a post today on Instagram where I was like about somatic strength. And I said, you know, but like as a yogi, you probably don't want to go to the gym. I also don't want to go to the gym. Like we get it. And that's why we've developed this, it's from the yoga mat. It's like with your yoga blocks. It's with, right? It's not, it's very friendly and welcoming to this group, which is our group. Mostly the people that come to our classes online and in person are women between, I would say, between my mom and me in ages. So I'm 43 and she's 79. And it's like, these are our people.
Right. So your work also focuses on women going through menopause and perimenopause, what you said. So what changes during the stage of life that require women to rethink the way they've been exercising, practicing yoga, or caring for themselves? I know you said strength training is very big to reduce the risk of
Hmm.
osteoporosis. Is there anything else even women can do to help with that?
I mean, the overarching thing that goes on, as you probably know, is just that estrogen, which is a hormone that affects every organ system in the body,
Oh, yeah.
declines. And that is a massive shift. It affects our emotional regulation.
Mhm.
It affects, it's not just the point that was huge for me to understand is that estrogen is not just about your cycle. It's about your skin. It's about your digestion. It's about your bone health. It's about like
Mhm.
it's about your breast cancer risk. Like it's everything. And so I think what really needs to happen is, it's interesting that I have grown it because I'm energetic and intuitive about the way that I work. And so we started doing a course called Somatic Woman about 3 years ago. So we probably started writing it about 4 years ago. So it was like I was 39, 40, and I went to Mary Richards, our yoga therapist, and my mom, and I was like, I feel perimenopause like starting. My mom had it quite early. I was already feeling some stuff with my cycle, and I was like, let's do a course on menopause yoga. I want to learn about it for me. And
Mhm.
like, so let's dive into this. And then we've run it now twice with big cohorts of women and just absolutely loved what has come out of it. And the thing for me that is the two pillars of that course, as it turned out, as we wrote it, is like, and this is a 6 month immersion, it's really deep, is like the two big parts of it, which we've already spoken about today, Kelly, are like more rest and more strength. So that's what women really, and I absolutely feel that is absolutely what we need, is permission to give ourselves more rest and down regulation and slowing down and saying no, boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then also permission to like go harder, lift heavier, like, challenge ourselves in a specific, very functional and healthy way. And the thing we added this year to Somatic Woman, which we've gotten so much positive feedback about, it was again just kind of an idea that I had, was a whole track about nonviolent communication, which is something that my mom has studied extensively. Have you heard of nonviolent communication?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay, so it was a technique developed by this man, Marshall Rosenberg, and it's it's a form of communication that is very interested in first and foremost identifying what you're feeling and needing before you even try to communicate with what the other, and then to connect with what the other person is feeling and needing. And he calls that self-empathy. So you like connect in with what's going on with you before you even, and why I love this is that often when we're having a friction communication with anyone in our lives, there is the habit, I see it in myself, to kind of take my position as the universal correct position. Like I'm right, obviously I'm right. The ego, is like, okay, this I'm right, and let me come at you and you're wrong and let me get you to change or tell you what you're doing wrong or get you to act differently so that I can get my need met. And what this style of communication, nonviolent communication, one of the key insights is like that I'm taking responsibility, radical responsibility. It's like, it's my need, first of all, and it may not be your need, right? And the other thing is it lets you, I just had an interaction a couple days ago, and it was so interesting because this woman was telling me what I was doing wrong. And then because of studying nonviolent communication, instead of immediately getting triggered and being like, well, like, what do you mean? I'm not doing wrong. You're doing wrong. Why are you shouting at me? Da, 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 da. She was saying something to me, and then I could translate it. And then when we spoke afterward and kind of she apologized for yelling, and then we kind of came to what I said, and I was like so kind of surprised. But this is from the nonviolent communication, is that I said, you know what it is like, you and I just had competing needs in that moment. You wanted one thing and I wanted the other. And neither of us is like really right or true. Like it's just from my perspective, I was doing the right thing. And from your perspective, you were doing the right thing. But what I was doing was disturbing you. And what you were doing was disturbing me. But we were both trying to get our own needs met. And when you look at it from that perspective, first of all, it like diffuses the
Mm-hmm.
trigger and the emotional situation. For me, I was like, well, if I can see that it's just me trying to get my needs met and you trying to get your needs met, I'm not so attached to the strategy. Maybe we can together come up
Mm-hmm.
with a new strategy that gets both of our needs met, as opposed to having an argument about either I'm right and you're wrong, or an argument about like, um her starting point of view was a statement that was kind of like, well, everyone knows that what you're doing is wrong. And I was like, you can easily get in a huge fight about that, right? Because you can be like,
Right.
you can start arguing about that fact. Is that true? Is it like, is what I'm doing wrong? And then I get defensive and da, da, da. But it's like this idea. And why that really helps women in menopause, to bring it back to your question, perimenopause is the up to 10-year period before menopause. And menopause just means 1 year without a period. So perimenopause is really the volcano years where stuff is going on. And I think why nonviolent communication helps women. So I would say those three things. It's like strength, rest, and then this communication skill, especially the self-empathy skill, is because inherent in this system of dropping estrogen, we are going to experience an emotional roller coaster. Like there are no women in my
Mm-hmm.
life in their 40s now who aren't reporting the same thing. Like their cycles are more dramatic. They're just experiencing more emotional dysregulation or um, strife with their partners or strife with their teenage daughters
Mm-hmm.
or right. So it's like this, it's it's a second puberty. It's a volatile time.
Mm.
And so that it helps us to, if for nothing else, that core skill of self-empathy, of just, I did it this morning. After my yoga and meditation this morning, I was in the kitchen emptying the dishwasher and stuff. And then I came out and then I had this moment where I just closed my eyes and I literally kind of put my hand on my chest and I was like, yeah, this is a hard moment. Like I felt torn between going upstairs and being with my family at summer break, da, 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 and coming back into here and doing 45 minutes of work before the day started when it was still relatively quiet. And then I was like having all these judgments about like, you don't spend enough time with your kids. It's summer break. You should relax. You should enjoy, blah, 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 blah. But then I was having these other thoughts like, well, it's Monday morning. Like, it's Monday morning. Like, you need to get everything done. You're going on a one last trip before school starts. You better finish everything, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it was like this and that self empathy skill of just, I literally stood there for about 10 breaths in my living room going, like, yeah, I'm
Mm.
feeling both of these things.
Right. I love that too. And also bringing it back to yourself because sometimes we're always so focused on what needs to be done next and who needs what. But hey, what do I need in this moment? Am I okay? Because if we keep pouring into everybody else's cup and we have nothing left in our own, we have nothing left to give. And that will catch up with us eventually
I
if we don't
100%
change it.
agree. And like, I even use that in real time, like with my 6-year-old boys who will sometimes shout at me, like if I'm not letting them listen to 24 hours of audiobook, like if I dare to turn
Oh my
off the
gosh.
audiobook at any time. And then I will just literally put my hand on my chest and close my eyes and say silently to myself, like, yeah, this is a hard moment. This is a
Mm.
hard moment. Like it's just like my 6-year-old is shouting at me. I'm caught between wanting to just say fine, then I just turn it back on because then you'll stop shouting and this is uncomfortable. Or the part of me that's like, you need to be a good mom, and like good moms don't let their kids listen to audiobooks all day, and like you need to make your kids go outside, or you should go outside with your kids, or like da, 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 like
Hmm.
the competing, right? But just that is so powerful. Just putting my hand on, and I will close my eyes, and my kids like kind of know it now, and so when I do that, I don't say anything out loud. I'm just silently saying to myself like, this is a great mantra from mom. How human of me, like how human of me
Mm.
to be caught between wanting to make my life easy and letting my kids listen and wanting to be a good mom and live up to high standards. And like, how human of me. And like, girl, this is a hard moment. You have a feisty 6-year old who is in your face shouting. Like, it's
Like,
right. So
mm.
that is like a very concrete skill that I use a lot.
So you said that the way that we care about or care for ourselves shapes the way we create, we teach, we lead, and we live. So how does nervous system regulation affect creativity and our ability to actually show up for ourselves?
Okay. So I teach embodied creativity, and that's for really my core students are wellness experts.
Mm.
So you could be a coach, a psychotherapist, a yoga teacher. And what I mean by that is I teach a method where we access a state of flow or down regulation. So we might do a shavasana, or we might move our bodies with our breath, or I might sometimes dance. And then right after that, without going to the phone, checking the email, talking to anyone, like there's no, it's you go from there straight to writing by hand. And this is a writing style where it's just almost taking transcription. You're just copying out what's coming. And I give my students prompts to help guide what they're going to write about. But there is a way in which this we're able to almost like open up, it's almost like opening up the curtain to the unconscious mind or something when we do these flow state practices or these shavasana down regulation practices, and then we go straight to the handwriting. And then the third piece that I layer on now is like helping them then read that into an AI. And what prompt do you say to the AI to quickly shape the raw writing that came straight from your intuition, from your most creative self, from your second chakra? How do you take that and then quickly polish it? And what's so interesting is one of the prompts, one of the things I say most often when I'm working with AI is like when I do that process myself, is then I often say, like, no, 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 use my words. Don't like, I just want you to like make it, do the
Mhm.
spacing and like help me. It's almost like a secretary. She's just typing it up really quickly because I can read it in from what I've written on my thing and helping me like a little bit at tiny edits and polish. But what's so interesting that I find over and over, it happened to me today when I was writing a social media post, is like I find that when I do that process, the words that I write have a truth, an authenticity, a directness that I really like and cannot be replaced by AI. There's like a world of difference between going through that process and me writing something versus and then reading it in versus me just saying to an AI, like, write a post about strength training for women 40 plus.
Mm,
Right? Like,
right.
it doesn't. And I think that the reader, this is how I do my newsletters. I think this is the reader can like feel this. It sounds like, and it's like also because in a way, when we do that, when we put ourselves in a state of flow or downregulate our nervous system, and then we journal, we are kind of like channeling. We're taking something from the collective unconscious, from our own unconscious body, from our deep creative self, however you want to name that. But when we do take that dictation, there's a certain coherence to what comes out and a
Mm,
certain honesty. We don't get in our own
yes.
way and edit what we're saying. Can you relate to that, Kelly?
I can because um I have a lot of creativity or a lot of creative energy. And there are times in my life where I had certain things flow through me. And like I would just record a video and just like it sounded so good and I was mesmerized and I was kind of like, well, how do I kind of tap into that again? And like you're saying, it's like a flow, like a state of flow, like I'm allowing it to come through and it was just so natural and I'm like, why can't I do that again? And so I'm so glad that you spoke more about that, but embodied creativity. Okay. So is it like a certain pose? Like is it a certain pose that helps you tap into that or it's more of like several different things you're kind of saying like a
So,
just a
what
state
I
of
would
flow?
suggest if you want to experiment with this, it depends, to our listener, to you, Kelly, is again, it's about the quality of attention or awareness that is created. So,
Mm,
everyone will have their own best techniques. If you know
right.
yoga, then set a timer for 10 minutes and move with your breath and do poses. If you like to go running, if you like to dance, turn on music and dance to it. It's
Mm,
it's about shifting yourself out of the analytical thinking mind and into the experiencing
mm,
mind. So that's the important part, I think, is like that you move into sensation, into the present moment, into experiencing what's going on in your body. And that can also be through meditation, if you know seated meditation. It can also be through the shavasana practices where and often during shavasana, I get these sentences. Like it'll just be I'll get, there's no other way to describe it than I get. I'm not thinking about
mm,
what I'm going to write. I write a newsletter every Sunday about sustainable self care. And if I did a shavasana right now, and then at the beginning, I would just be like, oh, I haven't written my newsletter yet for Sunday. Okay. And then I do shavasana, and I'm not thinking
mm,
in there, what am I going to write? What am I going to write? What am I going to write? But it's like planting that little seed. And then I will often, either during the pose or as I'm coming out, there will be just a sentence. And I know from experience now and from doing this for a decade that, like, that sentence will unlock the entire newsletter. That if I sit down, especially right then, with my notebook and I write that first sentence, the whole rest of it, it's like a thread that I pull. And then the whole rest of the
mm.
sweater will unravel and the whole newsletter will be because embedded in that first, it's often like sometimes it's even just the subject line or like I one came the other day was if you're a wellness expert, you're at risk for burnout. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
that, that was the subject line. And then I wrote a newsletter about what I mean by that and explaining it and all of that. So I encourage you to try it. I mean, this technique has been so valuable for me and my students.
Love that. I'm similar too. I feel like I get messages. Like I'm not sure, like I'll just get something and I'm like, okay, I need to talk about this. And then I'll make a video about it. But yeah, you seem a lot like me. So if there's someone listening right now who knows that they need to slow down, but feels like they can't give themselves permission to do so, what do you want them to hear?
Okay. So I'm going to be really practical right now because I'm very
Hmm.
action oriented. So here's what I would suggest you do tomorrow. If you're a doer, you are going to literally put Shavasana, Savasana. You are going to write that on your to do list as one of the key things that you need to get done tomorrow. And I am not a big believer. I have two to do lists at all times. I have like my to do list, which is like a whole page with a ton of stuff. And these are like the things I cannot forget to do. But then I have the to do list for each day. And my to do list piece of paper, those of you watching the video, I'll show you, is like just a little tiny, like it's a small sheet of paper and I usually write 3 or 4 things on it. So Shavasana would be one of those 3 or 4 things. And you're going to write it down as a commitment to yourself to do it and also as a way of giving yourself permission. So then I'll look at that and it'll be like, okay, I need to write my newsletter. I do that. When that's done, I look at the to do list and there's only 2 or 3 other things on there. And so then I might say, oh, the next thing I'm going to do is Shavasana. And then I'm going to write that proposal that I have to write. And so rewiring your idea about rest being lazy or indulgent or a waste of time or I don't have enough time to rest because honestly, we waste so much time doing other stuff during the day, like scrolling.
Yep.
So we do have time to rest. We need to give ourselves permission to prioritize it. And I think putting on the to-do list really helps with that. And then once you decide to do it, you don't fuss around. You say, okay, now I'm going to go do Shavasana. And the key components to practicing Shavasana at your home, you need to be in a separate auditory space from your family or your pets or whatever. So it's good if you can close the door. And then you need to make your physical body, you want to be horizontal, your head and your heart on the same level, and you want to make your body very physically comfortable. My last choice is to do it in your bed because that triggers the idea of sleep. But if you have to, you can do it in your bed. I like a couch or I like your yoga mat. You there in the book, our book on Shavasana, you're going to see more techniques, but you can also look up my YouTube, Lizzie Lasater, and there's free resources that'll show you like some key ideas. You want to put something behind your knees, something behind your head, ideally something behind your ankles if you're lying on your back, and cover yourself up with a warm blanket and cover your eyes. Also, very important, you're going to put your phone on airplane mode and you're going to
Mhm.
set a timer. A timer is a way to make a fence around it so that you can drop down. You don't think this is going to go on forever. You don't waste any boring time thinking, how long has this been? Am I done? Should I stop? Right? You like you set it for 20 minutes
Mhm.
is our minimum. You set it for 20 minutes and then the only kind of instruction that you're giving yourself is that you want to drop down back and into the sensations that are happening right now. So you will catch yourself thinking, we all do. You'll start thinking about like, what am I going to cook for dinner? We haven't had that red lentil soup in a while. I wonder if we have any onions. Like you're going to be doing that.
Mhm.
And then you'll notice, oh, I'm thinking about onions. This is boring. And then the way to bring yourself back from onions into your body is to notice a sensation that you're feeling right now. So you're going to feel the breath moving your rib cage apart or the pressure on the floor. And so you're going to do that 100 times in 20 minutes, that thinking and then coming back. And then you just try to spend longer and longer time in that sensation space. You're with the breath, you're with just the feeling of being here. There's no content, there's nothing you need to do. And things will float past and they can be helpful. You'll remember, oh, I need to make that dermatologist appointment. Okay. I'm going to do that later. Like things will, but um, I, I encourage you to try it as it's also a way, sometimes we call it bodyfulness as opposed to mindfulness. So, for those of us who have struggled with seated meditation, it's a way to access a similar state, but through the body rather than through the mind.
So, Lizzie, thank you so much for being here and sharing your work with us. Before we go, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
I am on the internet as Lizzie.yoga. So if you just type that into your browser, Lizzie.yoga, it'll go to my website. And there you can find our online courses. You can find my newsletter. We have, as well, we do a couple retreats every year. And yeah, my YouTube, my Instagram, it's all linked from there.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
questions. And thank you, dear listener, for your attention. It's such a pleasure to share this space with you.
So, thank you so much for listening to the Kelly Healing Project. Remember, healing is not about becoming somebody new, it's about reconnecting with who you truly are, healing the past, empowering your future. If you'd like to connect further with me, you can visit me at thekellyhealingproject.com. I'll see you next time.